Hello, everyone. Welcome to Amazing Transformations. As you know, we are joined by our returning guests here, Don Bennett. Let's see. Hold on one second. As you know, I'm super excited to have our returning guest here, Mr. Don Bennett, and I am going to read this little intro for him because he is such an interesting wealth of knowledge for us. Our guest today is Don Bennett. When he discovered inconsistencies within the health field, such as doctors who smoked and nutritionists who ate foods that were known to be harmful, Don set out to learn the realities of health for himself. Seeing that traditional curriculums were filled with biases, hidden agendas, misinformation, and missing information, Don became self-taught, avoiding the hurdles set up by academic tradition. He took a common sense approach to health and learned the value of looking past the conventional wisdoms. This approach allowed him to discover the realities of health, and 50 years later, as a disease avoidance specialist, he now shares this wealth of enlightening and empowering knowledge with others for their consideration and benefit, and is here today to share it with you. I'm really excited. Welcome, Don.
Hi.
Thank you again for joining. I
Well,
really
thanks for inviting
appreciate
me.
it. We have some we've already had a couple of these, and we try to find a new and interesting topic from Don's website. Also, he has lots of articles. It's health101.org. It has been an amazing resource for me, so thank you for doing that and having that website. I
Yeah,
love all of your writing.
it's a very old website. You can tell it's one of the OG websites because there's nothing fancy on it. You can't mouse over anything. Things don't change colors or fonts or anything. It's just, but it was always meant to be just, a warehouse of information.
Hey, it works for me. I like it. I don't need to hover over anything. I just want the truth, right?
Right, right.
um, So this topic that we have is called It Just Ain't About Diet. And I'm really excited to hear about this one because a lot of times when we get so focused, and a lot of other, channels are very much focused on the diet itself and what should we be putting in, whether it's a, vegan channel or if you're talking about a fruitarian diet, raw diet, regular whole food plan. Everybody's focused on the food, and I've not heard anyone really focusing on that well-rounded approach. So I am really interested to discuss this topic with you.
No, good, good. Yeah, I mean, it's been my observation that people get focused on diet. It's one of the most complex basics of health. So they get focused on it, and I mean laser focused on it. So, and a lot of times to the exclusion of the other basics of health. And it's physiologically impossible to be as healthy as you're capable of being unless you give equal attention to all the basics of health. Um, so that's what we're going to talk about today.
I'm excited about that. And just so you know, Don's community is called on Facebook, it's called The Healthiest Raw Vegan Diet. And you'll notice on health101.org, one of his articles, so like one of the beginning ones I read was there's seven, and actually he went over it on the first time you were on here, there's seven variations of a raw vegan diet, which like no one explained that ever either to me. So I was like really excited because I would always wonder why, like the first time I went raw, I didn't succeed. And then, I went to another version of it and then did it for a period of time and didn't succeed. So it's like, it's good to know what the healthiest version is, what is meant for our bodies. So I love that article too. But I will stop bragging about the website. You'd think it was mine, right? So tell us what exactly led you to find this? Just observation, or in your research did you figure it out when you were studying the human anatomy?
Well, I'm kind of like the Seinfeld of health. If you ever watch Jerry Seinfeld as a comedian, he's called an observational comedian. He bases his humor on just what he observes in life. So I've done the same thing. Back when I first started thinking about all this, there was no internet. the library wasn't good for anything really. The books in the library on health, not helpful at all. So people like myself were left up to our own devices to think for ourselves and to just wonder about things. And that's how I came to wonder about, the cooking of food, something as simple as that. The vast majority of the world's population cooks their food. And then
Right.
I had to wonder, I'm like, well, I don't think we would have started out cooking our food. I don't think there was any stores. I don't think Amazon was around 50,000 years ago where you could buy a, cooktop or stove or something to heat food, barbecue grill. And I had to check just to make absolutely sure there were no barbecue grills, because those were probably the first, cooking things that we had after we graduated from fire pits. But no, our original diet, definitely, we didn't have to cook it. And if you look at our closest relatives in the primate kingdom, their diet, they eat nothing cooked. In fact, some people did some kind of like studies where they gave chimps or bonobos, the choice between their natural food like mango or whatever it was and a piece of cooked food. And they never went for the cooked food. They smelled like I was just dead nonsense to them. And yet this is what most human beings eat. So that's basically the reason why beings from other planets don't land here, because they look down before they would come to visit, of course, and they see how just ridiculously crazy we are down here.
Right? Because we know there's got to be other life, right?
Well, they see, think about it. You're coming from another planet. You see satellites. Hey, let's go over there. I see satellites. Orbiting a planet, the third one from the sun. Let's see, there's got obviously life over there. And they get closer and closer and they say, oh, they've been on their moon. Okay, cool. Let's go talk with them. And then the science officer of the ship will say, well, whoa, hang on a second, Captain. I'm looking down there and I think those satellites and the stuff that's on the moon, that was from a previous species that has now become extinct, because the species that's there now, that's taken over the whole planet, they couldn't have been the ones to put the satellites up there. Because look what they're doing. They're actually drinking poisonous liquids. They're purposely inhaling smoke, from cigarettes, and they're cooking their food and they're eating animals. Yet they're a plant-based species. Okay, we're out of here. Boom, and they're gone. They're not going to come down and say hello. I don't blame them.
It's funny that you just mentioned that, because I was in a discussion on a different Facebook group. It was a group that someone asked for advice. How do you, lower cholesterol? And how should I lower my cholesterol? People are always coming on, how can I fix this, fix that,
Sure.
And there was a comment that explained the whole food, plant-based or raw, diet. And there was another person that commented underneath and said, yes, however, that might kill them. Let me turn that off. That might kill them, because if we're not all plant eaters. And I really found that we're not all designed to eat plants. And I found that really funny. And they connected some book, something like biodiversity. I don't know what it was, some kind of book about biodiversity or something. And I'm like, first of all, I know there's different versions. And obviously, like, the healthiest diet, which you and I believe in, is this, but still, to diffuse them from, or interrupt them from even trying to eat more plants. I'm like, there are these groups, sometimes I wish every group was set up like yours, with an expert admin that could come underneath and really give the real answer to people, because it's so disturbing online, just people's opinions and things they put out there, when it seems pretty easy to me to understand, especially when you explain it, the digestive physiology of a human.
Right. Yeah. All animal species have a species-specific diet. I've said this before, if you get all the experts on the giraffe together for a meeting, get all the experts from all around the world who are experts on the giraffe, get them in for a meeting. There might be things they don't agree on, like should giraffes be in zoos, should they not be kept in zoos, but they'll all agree on what the natural diet of a giraffe is. And partly that's because they can't disagree, because they'd be laughed out of their societies, because you can see what the natural diet of a giraffe is. Just go to where giraffes live naturally and go see what they eat.
Right.
We can't do that anymore with human beings, and we can't build a time machine to go back to see but we can still figure it out because, you can look at comparative anatomy, compare our anatomy to our closest cousins, see what they eat. So there's quite a number of ways to figure out what we're supposed to eat. But, and there'll always be books out there, books on, there's so many different diet books. We're all designed for the same diet, yet there's so many different diet books with diverse diets. But no one has written the diet book that would make them multimillionaires. The name of the book would be "The Healthiest Diet to Eat is the One You Like the Best." Well, that would just like sell millions of copies because everyone's going to want to buy that book. Really? Oh, I want to see the proof of this. This is great because everyone's telling me I got to eat rice cakes and nothing but bananas all day and lettuce. So that I might just make that book as a satire book, completely tongue in cheek, and see how many people buy it. It might make me a millionaire because at the end of the book, the last page of the book will be, and of course, I was kidding about this whole book. Here's what you're designed to eat. But yeah, I probably should do that.
Right, because people want to, like you said, they want to embrace what they already are eating and make it justifiable that that's what they should eat. And that's why I can make a post on how plant-based, is how we eat, and it gets no views, or, no one wants to interact, or if they do, they give an angry face. And then of course, if I said, you should eat more meat, I guarantee, because that's what people already like, most general public,
Well,
they're going to
you'll
come
get
on
you'll
and
get
like it and love it and share it.
you'll get pushback against that because there'll be the people, the health, quote unquote, healthy eaters. They'll say, well, not just any meat. You got to eat the
Oh, right.
grass-fed beef, and you got to eat the beef from cows who were killed suddenly, where they didn't know it was coming. They snuck up on them and hit them over the head. Yeah, there's all kinds of nonsense out there about that. But yeah, plenty of misinformation out there. Well, I should say misinformation and disinformation. And it's really important for your viewers to understand the difference between misinformation and disinformation. They might have heard the terms, but they really don't know the difference. They're both inaccurate information, equally inaccurate. But
Okay.
people dispensing disinformation know that the information is inaccurate. In other words, they're lying to you. People who dispense misinformation, which is the same inaccurate information, but misinformation, the person giving it doesn't know that it's inaccurate. They honestly believe it to be true.
Hmm.
They believe it. So they're not lying. They just happen to be incorrect. So you got those two entities giving out incorrect information, the ones who are lying. And if they're lying, they're doing it for a reason. They're trying to sell something, personal gain and all that. And of course, there's other reasons, to eat a particular diet. You like the one you're eating, but a lot of times it's social. If I were to tell somebody, well, here's the healthiest diet, and this may help you get rid of your skin condition or your heart condition or whatever it is, they're going to think about it and go, wow, this is just 180 degrees different from the way all my friends and family eat. I'm not doing it. There's no possible way. I'd be an outcast. Now, no one wants to be an outcast. So there are people who will continue to eat a diet that they know in their heart of hearts is contributing to their ill health, but they make a decision. Like, it's more important for me to fit in with my friends and family and live, to 65 than to live to 95 with no friends, no family. Okay, but you know what? The bottom line is you make major changes in your diet and lifestyle practices, you will lose the friends that you need losing, and you'll make new ones.
Hmm.
The new ones aren't really better than the old ones. They're just better for you.
That's a great
Family,
way to put it.
yeah. Family, if they're not going to listen to you, the heck with them.
Right? Because it's like, okay, I have to live in this body, so why would I eat just what everyone else eats? And it's difficult because also, like, people, without clearing out of the way that we're eating, we tend to then crave whatever that is. You know what I mean? So I think that it's hard. Like, I thought it was a great message that you said, because we can't even go see what we eat in the wild or what we would want, because we're so clouded really from a very small age to know that here's a reward. You have McDonald's chicken nuggets, or, whatever that you're taught, so early on. You're never really given the experience, with the exception of maybe being really little when you're drinking your mother's milk, or, just after that when you begin to eat baby food maybe. But even from that point, you're not allowed to really, you're clouded at that point and you're given things to eat. So, without us really having a true read of that, all we have to go on is like you said, like common sense. Like, you know, it's really difficult, even though I have done it, a few times too, like in certain periods of time. For me, ever since we spoke about, like, and it made so much sense that we're the only species that cooks our food, and that phrase always stands out to me, like every time, even over Thanksgiving when I ate like cooked vegetables and stuff. It was like when you said that, if you want to ask someone, I forget how you put it, you can put it that way, and we'll link the other two videos here because I know we got to get on to this one. But you said your friend said, well, nothing happens to the food when you cook it, and you told him to put his hand in the pan, in the frying pan, and see what happens to his hand, right?
Right.
If it doesn't destroy the surface of the food, right? And it's all put together like it was designed for us with the correct amount of, nutrients and everything, and we're distorting that with so many things we have, like the processed foods. And then check out our video we did last time with what you could be getting less of, and he also explains that, they're spraying the vitamin D on cereals and stuff. So when you eliminate that from your diet, you may be eliminating nutrients, although you're getting healthier. So I love that one. So,
Well, yeah, you could be getting healthier in one respect and unhealthier in another respect at the same time.
which is, people I think want to hear one thing and just stick on it. You know what I mean? They don't really want all these different variables. And I think you're right. I think that's why people sell things that are simple and don't give you all different sides of the information. Like one of the things that we'll probably get into today is that vitamin D3 is not the only thing that the sun gives us. I'm
Right.
sure somewhere along the line here you touched on it, but I'm excited to hear, what else should we look out for in our diet other than what we're actually eating?
Well, then the other thing I just thought about when you were talking about this is, even if someone becomes convinced, okay, I'm only going to buy from the produce department of my big market. I'm not going to go to the meat department anymore, the fish department anymore, the canned goods, or I'm not going to eat anything except what I can buy in the produce department. Now, you'd think that's a great thing. A lot of people would say, oh, yeah, well, there you go. I'm eating a produce department diet. But
Right.
even in the produce department, there are things being sold that are not natural for us to eat. And these things have both benefits and detrimental properties. So both beneficial properties and detrimental properties, because the things we're designed to eat, you might imagine, only have beneficial properties. They don't have any negative properties to them, but there's things in the produce section of the market that have both benefit and detriment. You want to stay away from those. You only want to eat the things that have beneficial properties. Now, someone might say, well, what if one of those foods that has both negatives and positives, you can only get that certain positive from that one food and you can't get that positive from any other food? Well, that would be a sad thing. Then we'd have to eat that food and deal with the negative aspects of the food. But that doesn't happen. Any of the positive properties from those foods that have both negative and positive, you can get those positive beneficial properties from other foods that don't have any of the negative properties of the food that has both. So you just have to, it just really comes down to, Jennifer, how healthy does somebody want to be? We all have a health potential. You can put it on a scale of 1 to 10. Your 10 will be different from my 10, but we all have a 10 that we could be, which is the healthiest we can possibly be. Can't be any healthier than that. And that brings with it the best odds of never getting a diagnosis of something serious. So it just depends how much you want to be a 10. Or I don't want to be a 10 because I know what I'd have to do to be a 10. I'll pick 9. Or I've had someone say, I'll pick 8 because I'm not willing to do what it'll take to be 10. So that's where I said, okay, you just realize as you go down in the numbers, the odds of you getting something serious, a diagnosis of something life-threatening later on in life increases as the numbers go down, as you get lower and lower in the numbers. I've seen people dying of horrible diseases, cancer, et cetera. I don't want to go that way. I just want to die in my sleep. I want to go to sleep one night and maybe I'm a little more tired than usual, but I don't think anything of it. And I just don't wake up the next day. That is how I want to go. So to get that, you got to strive for a 10. But a 10 isn't just about diet, as we're going to talk about now.
And I just thought about something you said before we get into this. When you were going over that, like, I think people make a focus on one nutrient that's in a food and forget about all the things, the why it's not meant for us. And like, it's kind of difficult when you're talking about this kind of thing because people are always have told you in your whole life, eat more vegetables, eat more vegetables. And then, you know, that's really unconventional. What we're saying is some of those vegetables are not meant for you. And then I was thinking, what if you had a friend, you know, that would come over and he would make you laugh all the time. You really liked him, but when he would leave, he would go and steal all your money or steal your, you know, your checkbook every time, and you'd be broke the next day or you wouldn't have any money. And like, it reminds me of what you mentioned about, and just so we can, if you're listening to us for the first time, like, what are some of those vegetables or things in the produce section that could be there, like, oh, this should be good for me, but it actually has like a detrimental thing that would occur too.
Right, right. But before I mention that, I just had a thought. When you hear that term, eat your vegetables, it's usually when you're a kid and the vegetables being referred to are cooked. So it's just cooked blah vegetables that aren't really doing anything for you, but eat your vegetables. And if you try to eat a piece of fruit just before dinner, your mom will say, don't eat that fruit right now, you'll spoil your appetite. And that happened to me once. I didn't know we were like 30 minutes away from eating dinner, but I wanted an apple. So I got an apple and I was going to start to eat it. My mom said, don't eat the apple, you'll spoil your appetite. She meant for dinner.
Right.
But I just heard her say, you'll spoil your appetite. And I said, but isn't that what you're supposed to do when you have an appetite, is spoil it by eating something? And she was,
Right.
we're about to eat dinner, put that apple back and sit down at the table. So,
Right.
but
I bet they loved you.
certain things that you can buy in the produce section and don't, everybody out there, do not shoot the messenger. The cruciferous vegetables aren't really great for you on balance, all things considered. I mean, again, people that look at things in isolation can find the positive things to say about them, but there's also negative things to say about them. So cruciferous vegetables is like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, kale, things like that. They're not really tropical things, and they're not, when you come right down to it, not delicious. I don't see eating a meal of just Brussels sprouts. I'm not overjoyed and going, this is just so good. I can't see doing that with a meal of just raw cauliflower either. I'm not saying it tastes bad. It doesn't. Or if it did, we wouldn't eat it in the first place. But it's not going to give you the same reaction as you would biting into a ripe mango. It's two different things. So just because we can slice them up and put them in a salad and put on salad dressing so that we can eat the broccoli or the cauliflower or the kale, doesn't mean we're designed to eat them, that we're best suited to eat it. So there's certain negative aspects. I can go into that another time. Then there's the nightshade foods. The nightshade foods are bad for everybody to eat. I'll use the analogy to gluten-containing foods, right? A lot of people that have these gluten sensitivities. So they say, I can't eat that, it has gluten in it. I will react immediately to it, and it's a bad reaction, so I know not to eat a gluten product, the person's saying. And the other person says, oh, I feel so sorry for you because I can eat it and I don't have that bad reaction immediately. I don't react acutely to it. It doesn't mean the gluten isn't harming them. It's just they're not oversensitive to it. They have a normal sensitivity to it. And over years, that constantly eating gluten-containing foods will harm them. People can have a bad reaction to dairy products, an immediate bad reaction. So they don't eat it because they get that immediate feedback. Other people say, oh, you poor thing, I can eat dairy products. Nothing happens to me. That's like saying, I can smoke cigarettes. Watch this, I'm going to smoke a cigarette. See, it didn't kill me. So evidently I can smoke cigarettes. Well, no, over time, the cigarette smoking will harm you. So will dairy consumption and meat eating and alcohol, drinking alcohol on a regular basis. So the nightshade foods, they have certain negative properties to them. Again, positive properties and negative properties. But I'd rather get those positive properties from some other food that doesn't have any of their negative properties, which can be causing inflammation or maintaining inflammation in your body over time. And just because it doesn't, eating nightshade foods doesn't put you in the hospital with the first bite doesn't mean that it won't put you in the hospital after 30 years of eating nightshade foods. And find me somebody who says, no, if it puts me in the hospital after 30 years of eating nightshade foods, that'd be worth it. It'd be worth it for me. Really? No, I want to stay out of the hospital. Thank you. And I can do without nightshade foods. I might miss them for a little while if I take them out of my diet, but after a while, you don't miss them. You don't even remember them. So yeah, but again, so you can really get into the weeds with diet. And if you really, really care about your health, you should, because like we said before, there are 7 different raw vegan diets. There's multiple vegan diets, and some are healthier than others because they're so different from one another. So it's good to know what they are based on how healthy do you want to be.
That's excellent. Thank you for that explanation. And what is the other factors? Do you want to go into that now? I don't want to keep you too long, or, I could ramble on here about everything that we always talk about in my questions, but I'll let you get to the point of us being here since we've already got that as the title, right? So,
Okay.
what does it mean when it's just ain't about diet? I can't wait to hear this presentation.
Okay. Optimal health ain't just about diet. And if you could put my screen to fill up the whole screen, that would probably be good. To be easier to see my slides. And let's get on to the first slide. Okay, first I'm just going to say a few little things about me for those who haven't heard me speak before. I've been researching health issues for about 50 years. I've been vegan for 49, teaching about health for 28 years, been raw vegan 23 years, counseling for 21 years. But when I say I've been researching issues for over half a century, that's researching, not studying. There's a big difference between researching and studying. I recommend that everybody be a researcher, not be a student. Talk more about that in a bit. I also employ the ethos of science. Like any good researchers that's dealing with science, where there's factual things associated with it, it's good to follow the ethos of science. You can read about that here at this link, which is health101.org/science. That's my website. And now I'm just going to briefly mention what the ethos of science is, so you have an idea of what I pass things by when I'm doing it. So first, it's open questioning. If you're thinking about something, no matter what it is, there should be open questioning. Don't just assume you know it all, because most of us do not. There should be no authorities. Some authorities, might have 100% correct information. Most do not. So you don't know who has 100% correct information and who has 80% correct information. So just no authorities at all. Okay, you can take in information from them, but don't just follow one of them. You shouldn't have any biases or personal preferences. You should have an honest desire for facts. You should have transparency in what you're doing. There should be a reliance on evidence and respect for rational and honest discussion, a desire to peer-to-peer, the ability to change your position when the evidence merits it. This is very important. This is one of the tenets all researchers follow. You should have an intolerance of distortion and misrepresentation. If you see distortion and misrepresentation, you recognize it, that should really frost your cookies. It should get under your skin that someone is doing that. You should have a skeptical interrogation of accepted notions, because what if those accepted notions are incorrect? So you want to just don't assume anything is, what people say it is. And the last one, and I think the most important one, is first, do no harm. Medical doctors take this oath, and anybody teaching anything about health, whether they have a certificate or a degree, it doesn't matter. First, do no harm. We should all be behind that. Okay, so like I said before, diet is just one of the basics of health. It seems to be the biggest one. It's not the most important one. They're all equally important, but there's so much disinformation and misinformation about diet and conflicting information about diet. That's why it's the biggest chapter in my book that contains chapters on all the basics of health. It's the biggest chapter only because there's so much to know about it, but it's just one small part. You also have to get enough sunshine. You got to, let me just pop myself out of there so you can see me sleeping there. You got to get enough sleep. You got to get enough physical activity, not too much. So not too little, not too much, and the right kind. You got to be careful not to take the toxins in. Very difficult to do in our society today because they're everywhere. And some of them are just approved because they fall under a certain amount, which the FDA says is okay. but the body doesn't say it's okay. So you got to be very careful about getting toxins. You got to be make sure you get enough relaxation, get enough laughter in your life, and manage that stress and stay well hydrated. So these are basically the basics of health, what you're looking at right there. But again, a lot of people go ahead and take food and, oh, that's the biggest one, but it really, really isn't. Okay, so in general, how to avoid disease? Well, respect your body, adopt lifestyle habits that promote disease avoidance, and pay equal attention to all the basics of health. Yet, diet may take up a lot of your time initially, but they're all worth studying, of course. Let's see. Let me get to the next slide. Okay, here we go. The basics of health. Dun, 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 dun. Boom, there they are. So you got diet, poisons, activity, water, sleep, stress management, sunshine, and I added a new one, education. That's a basic of health. Even 50,000 years ago, education was a basic of health. Where would we get education back then? From our parents raising us. We would learn from them. So we should be learning today too, because there's a lot to unlearn, let me tell you. Now, by the way, the first one is diet, which we're not going to talk about today, but when you do talk about diet, it really should be broken down into these two categories: healthy foods and adequate nutrition. Healthy foods and adequate nutrition. So there's the foods of the diet, and are you getting enough nutrient from those foods? That used to not be a question. When we lived out in the wild, that wasn't an issue. As long as you got enough to eat and you didn't get eaten, you were golden, because the foods came from nature, and you'd pick out the best ones, the best tasting ones, and the best tasting ones are usually the most nutritious. So you'd get enough of all. It's an expression I use a lot, enough of all the nutrients the body requires. Today, because of the way where we're getting our foods from and the way they're grown, no, you're not guaranteed to get enough of all. So you got to pay attention to adequate nutrition. So whenever you hear me talk about diet, it's the foods of the diet and adequate nutrition. All right, but let's move on to the next category, poisons. I won't spend a lot of time on this. Most of this is just no-brainers. Don't drink alcohol, don't smoke cigarettes, don't breathe in fumes. Health and beauty aids can be toxic to the body. So just try and put nothing on you. Toxins and hormones are in animal products. So of course, staying away from animal products, you don't have to worry about that one. But there are pesticides. That's something that vegans and raw vegans do have to consider, because sometimes, well, I just can't afford to buy all organic. Well, it's a good idea to do it, but if you can't, something's not a big deal, like things you don't eat whole, bananas you don't eat whole, watermelon you don't eat whole. If you got those that weren't organically grown, not the worst thing in the world, but there are some things that you couldn't pay me to eat if they weren't organically grown. Things we eat whole, lettuce, grapes, berries. I would never eat them if they weren't organic. I would just not eat them. And how do you clean strawberries? You can't really clean the pesticides off strawberries. It's not possible. You just damage the strawberries. Okay, so there's other forms of poisons like radiation. Cell phones, no one should be holding a cell phone to their head. And mammography, nobody should be getting mammography, especially women. That was my little attempt at humor, and that's the only time I'll do it today. Unfiltered drinking water and shower water. That's another thing where your toxins can enter your body. So you can use a point of use filter for your shower, a thing that just goes right on the shower arm, which will take out the chlorine and stuff. And then of course there are filters you can put on your tap in your kitchen. So you have filtered drinking water, which is always good to do. All right, activity. Again, a lot of misinformation here. I see people doing things every day as I'm walking around the park. I see people doing just things with their body that's not normal or natural for the human body to do. And I'm asking myself, how do they not see it? How do I see it? But there was a time that I didn't see it either. So until I saw it, until I realized, I didn't realize. So there's that point for everybody. So activity, if there's restricted lymph movement, that contributes to ill health. Now, so what is lymph? Well, let me just get me out of there. There's nutrients and oxygen are brought to the cell by what? The blood. What moves the blood? It has its own pump, the heart. So the heart pumps blood to the cell, and it always has to be doing it every second. You can imagine what would happen if your heart stopped. It can't. Okay, but your cell is a machine. It does stuff, does work, and it makes waste products. Those waste products are taken out of the cell, and that's through the lymph system. But the lymph system doesn't need to be moving every second of every minute of every hour of every day. It does need to move, but not every second. So it doesn't have a pump like the heart for the blood supply, right? But so what moves lymph fluid? Motion. So you just have to, so if you're sedentary, that's not good for your lymphatic drainage. So restricted lymph movement is a major cause of ill health. Muscle loss also. If you're sedentary, you'll get muscle loss. And if you're sedentary and you don't exercise enough, it'll slow your metabolism. Now, and the slower your metabolism goes, the more you'll weigh, the more fat your body will hang on to, and the more you'll weigh. So these are important things to keep in mind, the benefits of proper activity. And that's so low impact up and down motion really helps move lymph fluid, but low impact. So you're moving a lot of lymph fluid when you're running. I mean, you're doing great for your lymphatic system when you're running. You're just not doing so great for your skeletal system when you're running. Strength building and maintaining is also very important part of activity. Spirited walking. Yep, spirited walking, AKA that's walking with a spring in your step. You can't do it fast, but that's fine. You don't need to move. You don't need to walk fast to have great lymph drainage. You just need to walk with a little bit of a bounce in your step. And you're walking very slowly, but you're moving tons of lymph fluid. It's really very good for you. So here's the things we're designed to do: walking, skipping. Rebounding is just jumping up and down on a little miniature trampoline. The running and jogging, not so much. We're not really designed for that. A lot of people do it, but then again, a lot of people drink poisonous liquids. A lot of people smoke cigarettes. A lot of people eat meat and dairy. So just because a lot of people do something doesn't mean it's something that's natural for us to do or helpful for us to do. All right, so I often put things into these two categories of deficiencies and inclusions. So this is a contributing factor to ill health. Deficiencies of healthful requirements and inclusions of unhealthy substances and practices. So as far as activity goes, well, appropriate physical activity is good to have. And as far as the inclusions of unhealthy substances and practices, well, that would be inappropriate physical activity. So that's basically the way it goes with physical activity. Now, my observations have been that people are overfat and undermuscled. Think about that phrase, overfat and undermuscled. So people eating the typical Western diet are often overfat and undermuscled. So what happens is they switch to a vegan diet or a raw vegan diet, and they get their body fat content down to where it should be. And then they stand in front of a full length mirror with no clothes on, and they go, I'm too thin. Why do I look too thin? Well, it's because they're undermuscled. They were always undermuscled. You just couldn't tell because they were overfat by a certain amount, right? So now you get down to a normal body fat content, and now you can see that you're undermuscled, but you're not recognizing it right away. So the thing to do is you're losing weight with your healthier diet, pay equal attention to physical activity, so you then building up your musculature so that as your body fat content goes down, your lean muscle mass goes up, and the number on the scale might not change that much, but you look totally different. Anyone who hadn't seen you in a while and then sees you after you lost all that fat weight and gained the lean muscle mass will say, wow, you look great. What did you do? And then you can tell them, well, I'm just eating fruit and exercising. Don't leave out the exercising. Okay, so this is another observation of mine, is that people do way too much exercise or way too little. I see very few people that really have given it thought. And the reason why people are doing way too much and way too little is what? It's what everyone else does. The vast majority of people on this planet are either doing way too much or way too little. So if you're in one of those categories, you're in good company. But it's right in the middle where that's where our body likes to be in this case. Not too much, not too little. Okay, so now let's talk about water. It's another basics of health. You need to be hydrated enough. So drink enough. Some of you might live in hot climates, right? And what if you live in a hot climate where you're sweating, but you're also sedentary? You're not being that active. So you're not eating the same amount of food an active person would eat. Okay, so if the foods you're eating are medium to high water content fruits, but you're inactive, so you're not eating as much of those fruits as is natural for you to eat, now you're not getting as much hydration as you would if you were being appropriately active and eating an appropriate amount of food to fuel that appropriate amount of physical activity. So now you may need to drink water because you're sedentary, you're underactive. It's kind of interesting to think about it in that way, isn't it? And if you do drink some water, because a lot of times, especially if you're living someplace that's not humid, the air is very dry, you're drying out your body during the 8 hours that you're sleeping. With every breath you exhale, you're drying out your body because the humidity of the inside of your body is way higher than humidity outside your body, the humidity of the air that you're breathing in. So a lot of people who live in dry climates, especially in the winter, that's when it's toughest for the air to have moisture in it, they should make water first meal of the day just to rehydrate themselves. Have water with you always in case you get thirsty, because if your body whispers, water, you want to be able just to unscrew that top and just drink some water. If you don't have it with you, over the next hour, you'll be hearing water. And if you didn't go to get it yet, then you'll be hearing, I said water. So you don't want to let it get to that point. So always have it with you so you can take a sip here and there. And of course, never drink with meals. Some people say, well, I feel the need to drink water with my meals. Well, that's an indictment of the meal that you're eating. If you're eating a meal of watermelon, would you feel you had to drink water with it? No, of course not. So healthy meals, you shouldn't feel the need to drink water with them because they should be bringing with them their own water. And of course, drink healthy water. That's easy to do today. Nowadays, we have the technology to be able to drink healthy water. All right, what about sleep? Now, you see, sleep is probably the one basic of health where you don't get a lot of arguments. There's not a lot of debates. There's not tons of information, just a few basic things to know. It's at the opposite end of the spectrum from diet. Well, first of all, with sleep, you can't overdo it. It's impossible to get too much sleep. So the only thing you can do is not get enough. And that's what's really damaging to health if you don't get enough. So get enough, and not just in hours, but you need to get enough of phase 4 sleep. Because when you sleep, you start out in phase 1, which is the lightest phase of sleep, and then 2, 3, 4. 4 is the deepest phase of sleep. That's where you do the most recharging of your nervous system energy. So it's a very deep phase of sleep. You're as close to death as possible in phase 4 sleep, without being dead, of course. If you've ever been woken up by an alarm clock, or someone wakes you up and you don't know who you are or where you are for half a second, that's because you were woken up out of phase 4 sleep. Because everything in phase 4 gets shut off except breathing and heart rate and hearing, by the way. Okay, so you got to get enough sleep and enough phase 4 sleep. Make sure it's a dark room. You want it to be a dark room so you can go to sleep. And don't eat before going to sleep, because then you're giving your body a challenge. It wants to go to sleep. It doesn't want to be doing any digestion. But if you eat just before you go to sleep, now it has to make a decision. Do I not get into phase 4 sleep because I need to be able to digest what he ate? Or do I go into phase 4 sleep and just let the food sit in the stomach? Well, I don't want to do that because then the food will rot and putrefy and toxins, and dang it, I have to digest the food, which robs you of phase 4 sleep. So you can wake up in the morning and you're still exhausted. After 8 hours of sleeping, that's because you didn't get enough phase 4 sleep because you ate just before you went to sleep. Okay, don't dwell on problems as you go to sleep. If you want to have restless sleep and bad dreams, yeah, think about problems as you're falling asleep. I tell people all the time, try this as an experiment as you're falling asleep. Think about things that put a smile on your face. I mean, a real smile on your face when you think of it. You're not just smiling like that. You're thinking about something that puts a smile on your face. If you fall asleep to that, your dreams will be so much nicer. You'll wake up much more refreshed. And no stupid alarm clocks. What's a stupid alarm clock? A stupid alarm clock is just an alarm clock that goes off at the time you set it to go off, whether you're in phase 4 sleep, phase 3, 2, it doesn't matter, because it's stupid, the alarm clock. You want to get an alarm clock that'll make sure that when it goes off, it's waking you out of phase 1 sleep, the lightest phase of sleep. So it's not a jarring awakening. And there are ones that do that. They do that by, it's a lamp alarm clock. And the lamp starts lighting up and getting brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter about 22 minutes prior to the alarm itself going off and ringing. And that just brings you out of, it mimics a sunrise. And it brings you out. That's why keep your room dark with shades and let the smart alarm clock make an artificial sunrise and then wake you up at the appropriate time that you set it to do. or just go to bed a lot earlier. If you go to bed a lot earlier where you don't need an alarm clock at all, that is the best thing you could do. All right, stress management. Oh boy, people really suffer for lack of this one because of too much stress and too little stress management. So do deep breathing, look on the bright side. There's always a bright side. You know, if your car gets stolen and you're not getting it back, well, you didn't really like the car anyway. So now you get a chance to get a new car, one that you like this time. So there's always a bright side. You just got to find it. Focus on the positive. There's usually a positive. Don't worry about what other people think. If you worry about what other people think, you're likely to do what they do. And if you do what they do, you're likely to get what they get. And believe me, health-wise, I don't want to get what the average person is getting today. I do not want to. That's why I made all the changes that I've made in my life. So welcome positive change. Comfortable environment is what you want. You want positive social relationships, and very important, laughter. And here I'm going to help you with that. Oh, come on, that's funny. Okay, so the next one is sunshine. Sunshine, very important. Obviously, you don't want to get sunburned. I don't even have to bother to say that. But so you want to get enough, full body, don't burn, pay attention. No sunscreen, that's counterproductive, and your skin is like a sponge. It will absorb a lot of the chemicals in that sunscreen. You want to be well hydrated in case you want to sweat, because if your body wants to sweat and you're not hydrated enough, that is a very bad scenario. And sun does not equal skin cancer. There are people who get malignant skin cancers on parts of their body that never got any sun, like on their butt. So skin does not automatically equal skin cancer. Now, the recommended range, if you go to a lab and get tested, should be between 50 and 80 nanograms per milliliter, which is 125 to 200 nanomoles per liter. And this is year round. Don't believe anybody who says, oh, you just want to be in this range during the summer when you can do it. But yeah, these numbers will fall during the winter, but that's okay. Your body's no, it's not okay. We're not designed to live where those numbers can fall during a portion of the year. Okay, so you talk to people who live in tropical climates about their winter. They don't really experience the winter. It's basically the same kind of weather all year round. All right, so the test is the 25 hydroxy vitamin D test, also called the vitamin D, 25-OH total. It's called that also. If you live someplace where you can't get strong enough sunshine all year round, then you get yourself one of these. It's a phototherapy device. It mimics the UVB portion of the sun. That's the portion of the sun's rays that make the nutrients, plural, with an S on the end, make the nutrients in your skin. So you invest in one of these. Yes, it's not, $10, it's expensive, but it's a one-time purchase, and it's an investment in your future health. So if you care about your future health, you'll want to make sure you're getting enough of D and the other nutrients that this light or sunshine makes in your skin. These are the links. Now, all these links, by the way, that you're seeing in the video today, I know that Jennifer is really good about putting them in the video description. So if you're watching this right now, you'll be able to get to them after wait till the video's over, sit down. I saw you getting up. Wait till the video's over, and then you can go down to the description and you can click on any, they should all be clickable, and you can read about, that's my article on vitamin D. And keep in mind, when you normally hear me talk about D and write about D, there's always a plus sign there. How many of you have ever heard of people, educators, referring to D as D plus, or when you read an article they've written and they write D where they would normally write D, do they put a plus after it? No, I don't see any hands going up. People don't do that. And that's because a lot of people believe that D is the only nutrient that sunshine makes in the skin, but there's a half dozen of them, and they're all equally important if you want optimal health. So if you are feeling off and you get tested in a lab and the medical doctor says, oh, you're very low on vitamin D, that would certainly explain your symptoms. Here, you go out and buy a vitamin D supplement. Here's the one I recommend. That's the worst recommendation that any health professional can give to you, to go out and get a vitamin D supplement, because if you're super low in vitamin D, you're also super low in those plus vitamins, the nutrients, those other nutrients, right? You're guaranteed to be low in those because they all come from the same place, sunshine. They don't come from food, and only D can come from a supplement. So the best thing that any medical professional or any health professional should recommend is that the a phototherapy device, a good one, not ones that you're going to find on Amazon. Sorry, Amazon, had to say it. Okay, so remember, D plus. All right, so let's look at education. Now, I never used to have education on this list, but because of all the misinformation out there, it's very important. People are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Now, in this case, knowledge is not information, because there's some information that's false. Knowledge is correct information. That's what knowledge is. So don't follow one educator. These are my recommendations. Don't follow one educator. Find the conflicting info. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but believe me, the conflicting information is out there, whether it's for diet or exercise. Well, there really won't be any for sleep, but diet, exercise, stress management, there's conflicting information, especially with diet. But so you want to find it, and then you want to research both sides of the conflicting information. So multi-source education is best. Don't learn just from one person. Don't learn just from me. Don't learn just from Jennifer. Don't learn just from XYZ. Multi-source education, so that you can bump up against that conflicting information. And as I said before, and I've said thousands of times during my life, be a researcher. Learn as a researcher and not as a student, because students tend not to question what they're being taught. They don't tend to question the teacher or the educator. Researchers question everything and everybody. They don't accept anything on face value. So invest for your future health. Where does this apply to? Something like the phototherapy device that I just showed you. And I'm very careful to make sure everybody understands that everyone's entitled to their own opinions, but everyone is not entitled to their own facts. And fortunately, when you're dealing with all these basics of health, diet and exercise and sleep, these are all clearly and squarely in the realm of objective facts. There should be no opinions. There should, you know what? Let's keep opinions where opinions belong. Like, how about the painting that's hanging on the wall in your friend's house? Somebody will say it's the ugliest thing they've ever seen. Someone else will say it's the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. Is there a right and wrong answer to that? No, of course not. These are subjective opinions. But when you're dealing with seeing things that are embedded in science, in the realm of science, these are going to have objective facts. Now, maybe it's impossible to know what the fact is, because there was one time where we didn't know whether the earth revolved around the sun or the sun revolved around the earth. We knew that one of those two scenarios happened. There was just no way to know which one. So if I was back then and someone said, "What's your opinion, Don? Sun around the earth or earth around the sun?" I would have said, "Well, it's one of those." Yeah, but what's your opinion on which one it is? I would have said, "I have no idea. I can't have an opinion, because there's nothing. What's my opinion going to be based on? It can't be based on facts. We don't have any. Is it going to be based on what I prefer to believe? Well, that's ridiculous. What I prefer to believe regarding science, something scientific and factual and objective? No, so I have no opinion. It's possible to have no opinion, isn't it? Well, I don't know. I know people who that is impossible for. Okay, so moving on, some suggested reading is my website, health101.org/lovefruit. That's a great page. I'll tell you more about why in a minute. And then there's the reading page. On the reading page is about a dozen articles I've written out of the many, many hundreds I've written in the last half century that people have voted the most helpful. So that's what I've put on that page. And one of those articles is the other equally important basics of health besides diet. So that goes into a little bit more detail than what I've gone to here today. And these are the books that I've written. If you would like a complimentary copy of the ebook version, you simply go to the Love Fruit page, and there's instructions there on how to order the books for free. But you have to say that you heard it on Jennifer's podcast. You heard about the offer on Jennifer's podcast. The link to my Facebook group is going to be below, and when you go there, you can click on it and be taken right to the group. You can join it or not join it, entirely up to you, of course. I think you can read it without joining it. I don't know, maybe you can't. But if you apply to join, in you go. Okay, so I'll leave you with one of my favorite expressions. What can do you great harm is what you know that just ain't so. Thank you.
Thank you. I love your presentations. They're so like thorough and give us so much helpful information. And, it's like it's easy to focus on diet and forget all of those things. And I used to think that, that as long as you ate the right thing. And then I realized over time I didn't even know that I wasn't eating the right thing. So just when you think you have to have that open mind to read and listen to other people, because it's easy to just say, like the first time maybe I heard about, the word fruitarian, I was like, that sounds weird. You know what I mean? Like, who would just eat all fruit? Because you're coming from here where you're, you know, eating the standard American diet, and you just now decided to go. Most people go vegetarian first, I've found, and then they end up saying, oh, they see something about, that makes sense to them because they're already on that trajectory and they're already maybe wanting to help animals and things, and then they go vegan, and then they see something that might say, oh, wait, okay, that makes sense. Now that I'm in this frame of mind, I can see why people wouldn't cook their food, and then they get to raw vegan, and then it's like, oh, wait, because I remember the moment I had that aha moment when I read about what was happening, and then like further hearing you explain it, I was like, yeah, that does make sense. Why is that the easiest thing on our digestion? Like, why? Oh wait, what's this frugivore? Like, I've never heard of that. I've only ever heard of herbivore and carnivore. So all that time I was saying we're, technically set up like a cow. Technically, we're really not completely set up like a cow, like even though I thought I was giving people the right information, and it's like it's so interesting to keep evolving, and you have to keep having that open mind, because if you don't, you won't literally know the real facts. Like, you don't want to ignore it. So thank you for all the information you put out to those who are ready to accept it and receive it, because there'll be some people that may even be watching this that are follow my channel and start rolling their eyes like, oh, I'm not giving up any of my cooked food. So I appreciate you having the knowledge and putting it out there, and not doing things like for profit, just to tell people what they want to hear. And one of the things I try to do with this channel is make sure that we have all of the information. We have different people's who, whether it's, you know, quote unquote opinions or whatever they, are doing. And I think that like that's why I'm so excited that you've become a returning guest, because I really want to give people the truth. That's what, the knowledge, and that's what the name of the channel spawned from, was Veganowledge. So I appreciate that. And
I,
that it's
I, I
just
was,
so
I was
much
just,
stuff.
I was going to say, and this is very important because it speaks to today's topic, that I've counted a lot of people over the years, and there are people who are eating the healthiest of the 7 raw vegan diets, yet they're not fully resolving their health issues, and they're like, well, I don't understand. And I tried to explain to them. I said, yeah, you're doing the diet part of it perfectly. You're getting enough of all the nutrients that the body requires, but you're sedentary, you're stressed out all the time, you're not dealing, with stress, you're not doing, no stress management there, and you're not getting enough sleep. I mean, bang, 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 those 3 things will prevent you from being as healthy, prevent you from healing for sure. Not getting enough sleep, obviously, not managing the stress, and not being active to move the lymphatic fluid. Once they got all those things together and started, giving equal attention to everything else in addition to diet, then no problem.
I feel like it really resonated with me, that part. And I kind of like figured this out on my own, that I didn't like alarm clocks. And I know no one likes to get up for work and things, but especially like you said, since I've started going to sleep earlier, I find that even if I wake up the first time, even though I might have gotten a lot of sleep, I'm still tired. And I never understood why I had to go back to sleep. And then it's likely because something jarred me or woke me up. The other person that lives with me woke up, and, and I can hear things going on. And I've probably been waking up not in that sleep, that 4th cycle that, or, what I mean, the lower cycle that I should be waking up in. And then I was like, you know what? eating before bed is so bad with that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, no wonder I can sometimes feel like well, I don't know what happened. I did sleep well, or sometimes I'm not sleeping well and I don't understand why. And it's like, even though a heavy meal can make you tired, it also can, that probably is why we wake up sometimes in the night, because our body's like, okay, I'm doing a bunch of work here.
Well, one of the things you can do about the sounds, remember I said earlier that when you're in phase 4 sleep, that's the deepest phase of sleep. You don't dream in phase 4. You don't, if you're a sleepwalker, you never sleepwalk in phase 4. You're as close to death as you can possibly be. The only thing working is your heart and your lungs and your ears. That's
Ah,
very interesting. So your ears are still on, because if if someone were to come into your
danger.
bedroom, if the person you're living with were to come in your bedroom and were to see on the little sensor that you wore when you went to sleep, oh good, okay, Jennifer's in phase 4. Watch this, and just were to break a twig, you'd be up like that, because that's how we're designed. So when we're sleeping out in the wild, even in the deepest phase of sleep, and we're just knocked out, if a predator is coming and a twig breaks, we're we're up. We're up instantly. So to help prevent that from disturbing your sleep, since you know you're not going to have any predators come into your bedroom, you get it's a device that just makes the sound of a waterfall or a babbling brook, and just continuous. I use one in my motorhome, and it sits on the ceiling above my bed, and just I can't I never can be woken up by any sounds outside, because I don't hear them, because I'm just like, it's like I'm sleeping next to a waterfall
That
or,
sounds
or a
cool.
babbling brook. And that is one of the best possible things. I really should have had that in my presentation today. So that'll help with that. And I did mention the smart alarm clock to give you the artificial sunrise. And then the thing about how to deal with um, not going to sleep with a belly full of food. Well, that's an easy one. Just don't eat before you go to sleep.
I think I've gotten myself on a habit of doing that, but the more that I probably start to listen to my body, it will then show me that I'm not really hungry. It's my mind that's saying, oh, I need something. I need a snack before I go to sleep. My sister's name is Brooke, so I don't know my sense of humor when you kept saying a babbling brook.
Oh,
Like, I don't think it's that kind of I was like, can you play me a recording of you babbling on about something? But anyway, that was a bad joke. I liked yours better during the presentation, but I didn't want to come off of the mute and mess up the screen, but I definitely thought that was funny.
was that a good
Um,
cartoon about the vegetarians returning from the hunt?
yes, I loved it. And like, just I know that we've covered so many things here, and probably so many things that people can't even get their head around, because I had never heard of a phototherapy device other than maybe a couple of times over the years. I might have seen one of those things where like people were talking about, if you stare into this light, you'll sleep better or something like that. Usually it was used for like that type of thing. I've never heard it used to give us actually vitamins. And like, what, I know it probably is difficult to explain, but what are those things like, other than three? Are they just considered just the other full nutrients, the spectrum of nutrients that comes from the sun?
Well, they're well, what comes from the sun aren't the nutrients per se. It's just sunlight,
Okay.
UVB rays.
And
But
our body makes it.
when they hit the skin, they make D sulfate, nitric oxide, cholesterol salt. They make a bunch of different things which the body
Okay.
needs. But we didn't discover those other ones first. The first one we discovered was vitamin D, which is technically not even a vitamin, by the way. But I'll just keep calling it vitamin D. I don't want to confuse anybody any more than they're already confused. Um, so that's the first thing they discovered. But I wondered one day, is that the only one? Let me go do some research. And I'm like, there's other things. But
Right.
wait. Well, maybe they come from food. All right, stay calm, Don. Maybe they come from food. No, they don't. They only come from strong enough sunshine or a phototherapy device. Why isn't anyone talking about these? Let's see how important they are. Maybe they're all totally unimportant. What would be the odds of that? That sunshine makes 6 things in the skin and only one's important, the other 5 it never needed to make them? That's insane to even think that. So
Mhm.
yeah, so if you want to have proper blood pressure regulation, you need enough of nitric oxide. If you want, your body needs to make cholesterol. You mentioned cholesterol earlier. Well, how do where are we supposed to get it? Our bodies are supposed to make it. We're not supposed to eat it. So if our cholesterol levels are high, simple, stop eating it.
Right.
But our bodies do need cholesterol to patch things inside the arteries. If our bodies couldn't make any cholesterol, we'd be in rough shape. We could be in very bad shape. So to make enough cholesterol, you need enough cholesterol sulfate, and that comes from the sunshine. So when you become vegan and you stop eating cholesterol, well, you still got to be able to make it. So now that makes sunshine even more important. When you stop eating processed foods, which are fortified with D, well, now you're not eating any processed foods anymore. So now where are you going to get your D from? You got to get it from strong enough sunshine. And if you live in New York or Europe or Canada, where there's a time of the year where it isn't going to make any nutrient, D or the other ones in your skin, now you got to do something about it. What's the only answer? A phototherapy device, or else move closer to the equator. Those are your only two choices if you really, really care about your future health. Future health.
Can it help that I go out in the sun at all in this time of year? Well, I'm in the winter months now, or basic well, not quite winter, but you know what I mean. I'm in the cold season pretty much here. Like, is there any benefit to getting out in the sun for us, or is it we definitely require the phototherapy device, or is it kind of like a little less of all, but still some of all that we're getting in this area? I'm in the East Coast in the winter months.
Well, yeah, to be out in sunshine, even if the sunshine can't make any nutrients in your skin, it's still coming in through your eyes. There's the pineal gland. There's all kinds of other things that are going on. So you don't want to just stay in total darkness during the winter.
Right. Well, I don't have money for the device. I'm not going out. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. So it's still beneficial. Plus, going outside, you got a lot of fresh air. Why is that important? In the winter, people tend to keep their homes closed up because they don't want all that 30-degree air coming into their home. And now carbon dioxide is building up in their home from their breathing out, and that's not good. So it's good to open up the windows every now and then, let in the 30-degree air for about just 2 minutes. Just blow it through really quick with a fan. Yeah, you'll end up paying more for your heating bill at the end of the year, but it's important to bring that fresh air in through your house. So by
I'm
going
putting
out,
that on a loop for Dawn because she always yells at me for putting the windows open. I'm letting the heat outside. I was like, now I know. Dawn told me to do it, so I'm gonna
well,
blame it
yeah,
on you.
just put an actual fan there, and just you want to change out the air in the room in the house. So you only need to do it for about 2 minutes, and yeah, the temperature will be brought down, but then the heating system will bring it back up again. But you really don't want get yourself. Tell Dawn to get a carbon monoxide detector, a carbon dioxide detector. That's what you breathe out, and put that in the room. And don't open the windows, and don't you open up any windows for a couple of weeks, and you watch that carbon dioxide detector, rise, and
Mhm.
then she'll see, and she'll be like, Jen, open the windows.
I
But yeah,
guess
so
I
there is
like to
benefit.
feel
There's
it.
still benefit to going outside, but the sunshine is at too much of an angle. It's shining through too much atmosphere to make the nutrients in your skin, especially if you have darker toned skin. Those are the folks that really need a phototherapy device. The folks who choose to live in northern Canada, but they have very dark toned skin. They absolutely have to have a phototherapy device. I mean, everyone really does who lives there, regardless of their skin tone, but more so the people with darker toned skin.
You know what I find interesting? Whenever I hear you give an explanation of something, I can see where both sides that I'll hear something on. Because, like, on some posts on social media, I'll see people say, "This is a bunch of, you know what? I know we need cholesterol." So they automatically think they need to eat animals because they
Oh,
need cholesterol, because our body makes cholesterol. So we need cholesterol. We're supposed to have it. So they use that as their, and then you have the other person that comes underneath and says, no, we're not supposed to be eating cholesterol. So, like, obviously, that makes so much sense now that you've explained it in that way. Like, okay, yes, we need to have cholesterol. It does do things, but there's two different versions. You're making it, you're not supposed to be eating cholesterol. You're supposed to be giving your body the right nutrients to make it. So thank you for clearing that up. For it's like people get stuck on one thing out of the little study or whatever they want to believe, and then they take that and make it so that it's okay to eat the diet that they eat, and
well,
I'm
yeah,
sure
there's a lot of things that are looked at in isolation. So I can make a case for anything. I I made a case for snorting cocaine. I actually was able to make a case for doing it because there's a positive aspect to it. But the negative aspects clearly outweigh the positive aspect. Plus,
Right.
you can get that positive aspect from something else that has none of those negative aspects. So that's why I talk a lot about looking at things on balance, all things considered. So if someone's saying, yeah, but I'm going to need to eat meat because I need to get cholesterol because my body isn't making it because I'm not out in the sun here in northern Canada. So Don Bennett said, you know, sunshine makes cholesterol sulfate, which is necessary for making cholesterol, and I'm not getting that. So conclusion, I need to eat meat. Well, maybe there's a better way to do it. Why don't you take a cholesterol supplement? Oh, okay. Well, there you go. I'll take a cholesterol supplement. And now you don't get the negative aspects of eating meat to get the cholesterol because cholesterol is a plus for someone like you. Yes, from the meat eating, but there's so many negative things. Plus, would you be cooking the meat or eating it raw? Oh, no, I'd be cooking it. Oh, well, that's horrible. You get all the autoimmune reactions. So better would be just to take a cholesterol supplement and eat a vegan diet. But there's better than that. Better than that? Absolutely. Woo! Okay, so what's better than that? Get a phototherapy device because we don't just need to be able to make cholesterol from the sunshine. We need to be able to get those other nutrients as well, including D. So you don't have to take a D supplement. You don't have to take a cholesterol supplement. You just have, and there is no such thing as a cholesterol supplement, by the way. I'm just making that up for the sake of explaining this. But you see, this is the thought process. You want to do the best you possibly can. And the best you possibly can, living away from the tropics, would be a phototherapy device. And then you don't have to eat meat. And I know people are looking for excuses to do the things that they want to do. And I'm really good at taking away those excuses.
Right. And that's what I found so interesting. If you guys have a moment, go on health101.org and read the B12 article. That's one that we kind of touched on last time a little bit, and I was just amazed. I had never heard B12 explained, and there we go with the two sides again. We make B12, we don't make B12, we make B12, and a lot of your articles talk about we might be getting it, but we're not absorbing it based on other stuff that we put in our body, that we look at that one thing in it, like, you know, that you will talk about, like, yeah, there's a good aspect to some of the maybe, you know, vegetables or other plants like ginger or different herbs that we might take, and we might think, oh, I'm getting this nutrient out of that, but then turning around, that's keeping me from making my own B12 too, you know. And like that was so interesting to read that, like looking at the full spectrum of everything.
There's an expression forewarned is forearmed. Forewarned is forearmed. So when I tell people, okay, you're not eating the typical Western diet anymore, you're not eating any foods fortified with B12, now where you're going to get your B12 from in case you can't make it yourself. And there's many reasons why, even though we're supposed to be able to make it ourselves, there's many reasons why we either can't make it at all or can't make enough. So we can make some, but not enough. So those the two sides of the story there. So, you know, that's why there's a lot to know when you're living not the way we're designed to live. So forewarned is forearmed, because what you don't want to do is, I've had someone say, well, look, I'm not going to look into any of this. If I get any symptoms of a B12 deficiency, you know, if I get symptoms of something, I just go to the doctor. The doctor says, oh, yeah, you got symptoms. Let's do some tests. He'll find that I have a B12 deficiency, and he'll tell me to take B12. But you don't want to get to that point, because
Right.
symptoms of low B12 can be irreversible neurological damage. Who here, by a show of hands, wants irreversible neurological damage? Doesn't that sound not good? Right, no hands are going up. Wait, you were, the bathroom is back that way. Okay. Yeah, no, B12 is very important to look into in our modern society, because a lot of people can't make, I can make my own now, but only because I know what I need to do and what I need not to do to be able to make some, and I'm making enough because I'm keeping my stress levels down. That's very important. So just because you're able to make it, and there's enough cobalt in your food because you're taking daily green boost, and you have enough intrinsic factor, and you're doing all these things right, you could be making enough, some B12, but because you're so stressed out, you're not making enough, because stress just gobbles up B12. And if you're more stressed today than you would have been 100,000 years ago, because what stress would you have had 100,000 years ago? Oh, there's a lion, and you run. And That's it. The stress is, you ever see zebras? Be like the zebras.
Mhm.
Watch a group of zebras out there in the, they're grazing, right? There's like 20, 30 zebras. And a lion will all of a sudden run into their midst. What do the zebras do? They freak out. They are at stress central at that point. But for how long? As soon as you watch, as soon as the lion downs one of the zebras, and the other zebras realize this, they stop running and go back to grazing, even though there's a lion in their midst
They're
eating
not dwelling on it,
one of
right?
their friends or relatives. That's it. It's over. They know the lion's not going to be any danger to them for another couple of days. So the stress is over. That's it. You don't see the zebras continuing to run after they no longer need to, hiding behind trees, stressing about it, talking about what happened. Hey, did you see they got Joe? Yeah, I'm sorry. Joe owed me money. You don't see any of that stuff going on. The zebras go back to just, zenning out
Existing.
again. So
Right.
minimizing stress is very, very important. But what happens to us, by the way? You ever see someone who got cut off in traffic and they get pissed off at the moment it happens? Okay, that's understandable. But they go on talking about it for the rest of the day. They come home, oh, this dick cut me off in traffic, and I can't believe he did that. Let it go.
Right.
Isn't there a song, Let It Go? What was that movie? Frozen? Um, yeah, so
Right.
that's a good
Right.
song. Just let it go. Learn from it if there was a learning experience to be had, and then just let it go. You got to minimize stress because stress gobbles up B12.
That is really cool. And like that, it heightens all of our, I guess too, like our immune system is lowered because of that if you're constantly under stress, because
Oh
it's
yeah.
putting all its attention. Like I think when I started looking at the body, like, it's a machine that needs to that we're trying to get it to run properly instead of looking at it as just, okay, I live in this thing and it's here. I'm supposed to have, whatever everybody else is doing, whatever everybody's eating. It's just there to, like, why am I making it work so hard? Like it was just like eye-opening to say, okay, what was I thinking? You know what I mean? Like I was being so mean to the body that's housing me.
Yeah, just imagine how many things people do to their body, where if you could imagine the body having a face inside, with eyes, and the body is like, oh, it's just rolling its eyes. It's like, dude, WTF? What are you doing to me? Don't order another beer. He's ordering another beer. Oh my God. That's the body reacting to the things that we do and have no problem doing it because the things we do are what? Socially acceptable. Well, yeah, they're socially acceptable because they're really good, not for us, but they're really good for the medical and pharmaceutical industries. They love all the socially acceptable things that we do because
Right,
it
right.
negatively impacts our health. And as there's a correlation, as our health goes down, their profits go up. That's not a good correlation for there to be because that ends up impacting regulations and commercials on television and stuff like that. So, yeah, this is definitely, we're not living in a perfect world. So true health care today is self-care. You really got to be, looking at what's going on, looking at all the motivations, why people say things, why people do things, even on the mainstream news. When I bring up all these connections of people say to me, well, if that was true, we'd hear about it on the evening news. The evening news
No,
would
you
inform
won't.
us. Well, maybe, 70 years ago, in the days of Walter Cronkite and Eric Sevareid, those were honest journalists, but not today. No, you're not going to get it today. Today, everyone in networks is just doing what they need to do to keep the
The
advertisers
sponsors.
happy. The
Hmm.
advertisers are those giving them the money. That's where they get their money from. And the advertisers, even some of them even give extra money. Just give extra money for ads. The ads don't make the advertiser any money. Can you imagine that? If you or Dawn had a product and you wanted to do some TV advertising, wouldn't you hope and pray that that money that you're spending on the TV advertising is going to come back, in multiples? Because that's what
Hmm.
you're doing it. You're doing it to advertise your product, hopefully to make back what you spend. If not, now it's a losing proposition. There are companies that give money for ads to networks where the ads make them no money.
Just to
So
combat the other
just to be able
side.
to give money, lots of money to the networks, so the networks will not say anything negative about them, will not run any negative stories, and will tout their narratives. So that's why when there's truth out there about the negative aspects of, something, I won't say it,
Mhm.
that happened quite recently in our history. We don't hear the negative stuff about it. We don't hear the truth about it on the network news. We have to go to alternative
Alternative.
news. Yeah,
Yeah.
and even there, you have truthful alternative news and bogus alternative news. So even there, you got to be watching out. It's like forewarned is forearmed.
It's like so many things can be figured out with just simple common sense when you really start to look at it and take all those pre-programmed misconceptions out of your mind, and that's difficult for a lot of people to do. I know I've kept you long, but there was two more things that I thought of while the presentation was going on, if you have a few more minutes.
Sure.
um the thing about the exercise and the daily green boost, so like within the realm, let's start with the daily green boost. So when we're eating fruit, I guess for people who've never even heard of this diet that might be looking at this, is it like, as long as and I know we talked about that last time, as long as the minerals in the soil is appropriate for it, we can thrive and be healthy on a fruit diet, for the most part, as long as we're getting the right amount of the fatty fruits, right? Like, that has the protein that we need for the most part.
Yeah, as long as the nutrients that we require are in the soil so they can get into the plant, and then as long as that soil is proper, in other words, it has the right microorganisms, because it's the microorganisms that transport the nutrients from the soil through the root system into the plant. So it's a two-part thing. The nutrients got to be in the soil in the first place, and then the soil has to have proper um, microorganisms, little living creatures in there that do the transporting. As long as those two things are there, and then we eat those foods and we eat enough of them, and we don't have anything that interfere with our own digestion, then we'll be good to go. But that's the problem. We're not eating from the wild. We're getting our foods from a store, which gets them from agri industry growers who aren't putting back into the soil everything that needs to go back. They're only putting a couple of things back and why do they do a couple of things? They'd like to do nothing, but if they don't put at least a couple of things back, nothing will grow, crop after crop after crop after crop. So they discovered a long time ago what they need to put back, bare minimum, to be able to grow crop after crop after crop in the same soil, because they're growing for profit. They're not growing for nutritional content, obviously. And yet we, raw vegans and vegans, are going to the store thinking we're doing good. I'm eating all the foods that are listed on that list of the healthiest of the raw vegan diets, and that's the foods I'm eating. But you're not growing them yourself on soil that you know to be nutritious and have the right microorganisms in them, healthy in that respect. The microbiome of the soil. We talk a lot about the microbiome in our guts, in our bodies. Well, soil has that too.
Okay.
So that's part of the problem. Now, B12 and D are two different things. They're not supposed to come from food in the first place, so we got to keep an extra eye on those. Those two are the two that really tank vegans. When vegans go to a vegan diet and they're not getting any more processed foods that are fortified with D and B12, and they're not taught about D and B12, that's where their health goes downhill. Sure, they're getting more of other nutrients, but they're getting, like we spoke about last week, they're getting less of other ones like D and B12, and their health can go downhill. So there's an educational process. Would that have been a problem 50,000 years ago when these people were vegan and living out in the wild, just being in the sun and not having a lot of stress, and there's plenty of cobalt in the soil, so it's in their food, so it's in their body, the body can make B12? No, it wouldn't have been, none of these things would have been issues back then. Like I said, if you got enough to eat and didn't get eaten and didn't be overly curious, hey, I wonder what's in that cave. And don't go into the cave, as long as you stay out of the cave, because there's usually bad things in caves like bears. You were good. You were fine. But that's not the case today. And we're not hearing enough about this simply because of that correlation that I showed you before. As ill health goes down, profits go up for some very powerful industries. And that's why we're not hearing about, I'll go into Whole Foods. I don't want to pick on them, but I go in there and I saw a big sign that said, Sunny is great for dispositions, but not for your health. Yeah. Sunny is great for dispositions. Like you've heard the expression, he has a sunny disposition. He's like
Mm-hmm.
always cheery. Sunny is great for dispositions, but not for your health. I'm like, what? And I went and complained to the manager about it. I said, what do you mean sunny is not? Well, I guess they mean you if you get a sunburn. I said, well, that's just common sense not to get a sunburn, but we need sunshine. It makes the nutrients in our skin, like vitamin D and somebody else there. I heard a coworker out of the corner of my ear say, "Yeah, well, we sell vitamin D, you know." What? What did you just say? We sell vitamin.
Right.
Now at
So
the time,
get it unnaturally because we
yeah,
don't
so
want
you
you to
can
get
get
it
it, you buy it
naturally.
here. You don't have to get it from the sun. And then I saw signs about cooking certain fruits. They had one for cooking strawberries, and they had one for cooking bananas to make banana bread, and one for cooking other things. So fruits that we would normally eat raw and they're delicious and sweet, and now they're giving you recipes there on how to cook them. So if you didn't know better, you'd swear that the medical and pharmaceutical industries, you know, the people up at the top wearing the suits, the upper management, are influencing wherever they possibly can how to get the population's health to go down. Because the
Right.
lower it goes, the more money they make.
Yet seem like they care, of course.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. You know,
But
here
that's their
we're giving them a
biggest
free.
concern. We have a complete organization set up for that. But we won't go into that either for YouTube channel. Like so like the funny thing is when you were talking about those giraffes, or no, the zebras, right? When they would see a lion and they would go off running, is that like, and that the same thing that happens whether we are just running on our own or with like eating cooked food? Is that heightening or affecting our lymph, or how does that work?
No,
Why we should?
when we have a thing called the fight or flight reaction. So if you're
Okay.
faced with danger, you're either going to fight or flee, run. You're going to do one or the other. Some people do freeze in place, which is very, very bad. But generally, it's fight or flight. But that reaction is it just ramps you up like crazy. You're able to run very fast, even though you're damaging yourself because you're running so fast. You can't feel the pain of the injury that you're causing because your body doesn't want you to stop, because if it could feel the pain, it would stop you from running, but you're running away from danger. You're trying to outrun the danger. So that's why there was one time I ran. I realized I'm late and I still have to get to the train station in Manhattan. And I look at my watch. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to make it unless I run. And I am not an advocate of running. I am totally against running. Yet if I miss that train, the next one isn't for 2 hours. And I'm like, I can't be late to the meeting. So I ran. I ran full blast, got to the train station, got down there. I had the ticket, fortunately, got into the train, bing bong, doors closed just as I got in. And I'm sitting there, right? And I'm like, well, I feel great. That's because of all the endorphins that the body was producing to mask the pain of the injury that I caused from that massive,
Oh.
full balls to the wall running. And after about 5 minutes, now my smile is slowly going away because I'm like, ow, 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 ow. Now the endorphins are wearing off and I can feel the pain of the injuries I caused by that sudden running. So
Hmm.
that's what happens. People get addicted to those endorphins, by the way. That's why
Yes.
you can get addicted to running. I have a lot of friends that this has happened to, and they're you can see objectively they're damaging their bodies over the years, but they still continue to run. And it's common sense says it's the running that's doing this damage to your skeletal structure. Stop running, but they can't hear stop running. And some people can't hear stop eating meat or stop drinking or stop smoking pot or whatever it is, because
Mhm.
those things give good reactions to them, the
They feel good
endorphins or
initially.
whatever it is. So yeah, that's why it's tough to beat some of those things. They're not physically addictive. The addiction is emotional. You know, it's an emotion. Whenever you hear addiction, it's really an emotional addiction. It's
Hmm.
not some we don't develop a need for tars and nicotines. That's not
Right.
what makes it difficult for us to stop smoking. Oh, it's so difficult because we developed a need now, a requirement of tars and nicotines. So when I stop smoking, there's no more tars and nicotines coming in, yet my body requires them. That's not it at all. They call
Right.
it, and what do they call it when you stop smoking? They call it withdrawal.
Mhm.
They call it withdrawal because they don't want to call it what it is. It's detoxification. but that would start to educate the population too much. So we'll call it something else. Oh, it's withdrawal. These are withdrawal symptoms. No, they're detoxification symptoms.
That makes sense. And when you talked about muscle, should we be lifting weights to build muscle? Like, is there a form that's acceptable to get more muscle built, or is that just from the walking and doing the things that we would normally have done thousands of years ago?
Well, it's a great question. To answer it, you start out by thinking back to first principles. What are we designed to do?
Mhm.
Just go back to first principles. So like you do with diet, what are we designed to eat? So with exercise and physical activity, what are we designed to do? Well, we're designed to walk. We're walking champs. Um, we're designed to sprint, which is running as fast as you possibly can, and that's to get away from danger. And we're designed to climb. We're not as good climbers
Oh,
as
that
some of
makes
the other
sense.
primates. Yeah, so if you're climbing, you're using all your muscles, basically. You're using your abdominal muscles, your core muscles, your arm muscles, your leg muscles, and you're lifting weight with it. How
Hmm.
much weight are you lifting? Your own body weight,
True.
which is
Right.
which is perfect for you. Unless you're carrying around 60 pounds of excess body fat, that's not good for your joints to be climbing with all that excess. But if you're of a normal weight, yeah, climbing is the best exercise on the planet. That's why I recommend to people to join climbing gyms. And if
Hmm.
they can't afford to join a climbing gym, get 2 extension ladders at Home Depot or Lowe's and raise them, get them as high as you can and put them together like this, and so they don't fall. And they climb up one, climb down the other. Some people have gotten 5 and put them around like this.
Oh,
So they
okay.
climb up this one, they climb down that one, they climb up this one, they climb from one to the other. If they don't have a tree in their yard. Now, if you have a big tree in your yard, yeah, climb the tree as long as
Mhm.
there's no hornets in it. But climbing is the best exercise. Let me put it to you this way: what's the one thing, one physical activity that you're most likely to be able to do when you're 98 years old? It's
Walk,
not.
maybe?
It's not running. It's not sprinting. It's probably not climbing. It'll be walking.
Okay.
Walking would probably be the one that you're easiest to do when you're 98 years old. So since that would be the easiest thing to do, and that would be a great thing to be able to do when you're 98, because I see a lot of 98-year-olds who can't walk; they're in a wheelchair. So if you don't want to be in a wheelchair or using a walker, that's not the same as walking. If you want to be able to walk, what do you do now when you're 30, 40, 50, 60? You do a lot of walking now. Do a lot of walking now so that you'll be able to walk when you're 98, and try and do climbing now. Now, if you can't join a climbing gym, you can't buy the ladders. Now, what do you do? Well,
What
you can
about that
join.
elliptical? Would that be
I don't like those kind of things because it's not respecting your body, how your body moves, because you're
okay?
strapping your feet into these things. And people of different, it's not adjustable. People of different sizes and heights go on the thing. And when I go to the gym, I watch that and I'm like, I want to say to them, it's probably not the best machine to be using. So
Right.
what are good machines? The ones where your feet and your arms are not locked into anything. So a treadmill's okay, and then you can make the treadmill go up like this, and you really get a good workout. I was on a treadmill one day in the gym, and there's like 1,000 treadmills, next to each other, right, in a line, and I'm on my treadmill, and I cranked the thing up. I cranked it up, and I'm huffing and puffing. The guy in the next treadmill, his treadmill's perfectly flat. He says to me, I'm not kidding. He said, you're making that a lot harder for yourself than it needs to be.
Like, okay, that's the point of what I'm doing, right?
Well, duh. I said, so the only thing I could say
That's
to him is
funny.
like, really? I had no idea. Um, so treadmill, you're not locked into anything. What about the staircase machine? Well, you're climbing stairs.
Hmm.
That's good to do. Um, so that helps with your lower body. So what my point was, if you can't join a climbing gym because climbing is the best activity, then there's a climbing machine you can buy. It's about $400. You're basically, it's putting you through the motions of climbing for your feet
Okay.
and your arms, and there's resistance built into it. So that's the closest thing to climbing in a climbing gym. Well, if you can't do that, if you can join a gym for $10 a month, I think they have those kind of rates. You join a gym and then you use the machines that are there to approximate what your body would be doing if it was climbing. The only caveat is, what do you set the machine to? See, if you're climbing in a climbing gym or with a climbing machine, you're using your body weight.
Okay.
There's nothing to set it to. But if you're using one of these machines where you sit in the machine and you're pulling on this thing, but there's a weight stack there, what do you set the weight stack to? If it's too little, you're not working yourself out the way you would if you were in a climbing gym. If it's too much, you don't want to do too much either. So the whole thing of how to set those machines goes away when you just use your own body weight. Climb a tree, use a climbing machine, join a climbing gym, and then just do a lot of walking, especially spirited walking, to move that lymph fluid.
That sounds excellent. Thank you for that. I think that was my questions from when you were going over that, and that's gonna be difficult, like you said, for a lot of people to even, comprehend, because and people may be being really too hard on themselves if you think about it, because like I'm like, oh, I should be running or jogging, or you know what I mean, I should be doing this, doing that, I need to eat all these different types of foods, and and when it comes down to it, there's really a simple approach to it, which is why I love the information you share. It's not like there's a bunch of variables. However, once you understand the concept, then you can then make sure you're doing the right things depending how healthy you want to, truly be. So
Yeah,
is there
get enough
any
sleep, eat the foods you're designed to eat, walk, laugh.
right, which I
It's not a
love.
lot to it. It's just get back to the basics.
Mm-hmm. I can't wait to get up and open this window. I've been trying to ever since you mentioned that. Oh, what is any like, I don't know, any last minute things that you may want to address on this topic, or anything else you want to comment on?
Well, just the things that people, just based on what I read in the Facebook groups, the most misinformation in the Facebook fruitarian groups and raw vegan groups is this whole battle between we need supplements, we don't need supplements. So there's this one Facebook group that's devoted to, no, we don't need any supplements, no D, no B12, nothing. And I'm like, with all the evidence and the facts and information that we have, objective information, how can people say this? People are they resonate with it, like, oh, we don't need any supplements, good, supplements cost money, I don't like spending money, great, I don't have to spend money on supplements. And then they don't take any, and after a bunch of years their health starts to go down into the toilet, and they're wondering why, and then they go get tested, and that's when they find out, oh, I see, I needed supplements that whole time. And they're even being told this by a medical doctor. So yeah, so there's a ton, be very, very careful. There's tons of misinformation out there, even in a raw vegan group, where they'll say something like that. In other words, they get 80% of their information correct as far as the foods of the diet. And they'll talk about don't food miscombine, mono meals are best. And you're like, check, 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 check. And then they say, and you don't need any supplements at all ever. I'm like, oh my God. Because they've been listening to somebody who says this, and this somebody is very popular. Well, look, I'll leave you with this. The most popular information is not necessarily the most accurate, because what's the most popular diet on the planet? Happens to be the least healthiest one.
Making us all sick.
Right. So the most popular fill in the blank is not necessarily the one that's best for us, including when it comes to information.
I had no idea, like when I began this diet, like I started out raw vegan from watching a documentary. And like you said, even though I was healthier, I was getting rid of these things I had for years. I stopped the back pain, I lost weight, stopped the allergies, you know what I mean? I had all these positive things, but I realized then I wasn't eating enough. Like really fruit is where I'm going with it now, even though then I didn't know that, because I was like eating empty things, like you mentioned, like I was eating majority of cucumbers and lettuce and kale and spinach, and I was eating all these plants, but I realized, why am I not maintaining weight? Why am I continuing to lose all of this weight? I can't continue this. And I didn't know at that point what to do to, improve it. And that's when people can resort to, oh, even though I never said it wasn't working, I did end up thinking, well, I must need bread, or, I must need potatoes. And of course, my mind was like, well, I like those things when I used to eat them. Like I was addicted to those things. So of course, that's what I'm going to do. That makes logical sense. Like at that point, because I didn't even realize that we were meant truly to eat fruit. and that we were supposed to even have a certain amount of like fat in our diet. There's so many, like, we have to eat no fat. When we look at the fruits that we were probably designed to eat in the tropical regions, there were fruits that are fatty. And I think that's another mistake that a lot of people make that I have learned from you, is that they just think, oh, okay, I could, I don't need any of this, or trying to make it all one thing. And you realize, okay, I need to really model what I was supposed to eat, but I also have to make adjustments based on where I live, as far as like what the best I can do for myself is. Like you said, if you don't live near the equator, you need the phototherapy device. It just is what it is. You can't say, no, I'm a naturalist and I'm using my own sunlight, because I realize it's not doing me any good, right? So it is interesting to like read your information, and even though it might not be what I always want to hear, it is the right information. And once that's stuck in my head, I can't really, where I might falter here and there, I can't really believe anything that is not the truth, I guess, in so many ways. But I would think I was going to say, when I went vegan, I didn't realize that there was a difference within the vegan community. There's some people that are like pro whole food plant-based, and then there's whole food plant-based, no oil, no salt, no sugar, and then there's there's raw vegans, and then within the raw vegan realm, or there might be junk food vegans that say, oh, that's silly, all that stuff, and you just need to eat those fake meats, and and then that's how you can get strong, and you need this for protein, you need almond milk, you need this. And then there's like, okay, now we're raw vegan, and I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be the community that everybody agrees on everything. And then it's like, no, there's like, oh, you have to eat more vegetables, you have to juice your vegetables, and you have to eat more fruit, and you shouldn't eat fruit, and you should eat lots of nuts, you shouldn't eat nuts. So like, that's why that diet, the 7 vegan diets, and you should eat supplements, you shouldn't eat supplements, but neither one of them are exactly right. That's what I'm realizing when you really look at the whole realm of it. Yes, maybe you don't need a supplement, but that word there is the big key to it.
We as a human species tend to be very binary in our thinking. It's this or this. So there's just two positions, but there's always a spectrum. So those two positions are just at either ends of a spectrum. And what I've found is that the truth is often located somewhere in the middle.
Right.
So it's not here and it's not here, but this is where people are. They're either here or here. And where am I? I'm floating around somewhere in the middle, looking over this way, looking over that way. Yeah, he's right about that, but he's wrong about that. And he's wrong about that, but he's right about that. And like trying to just get at what the actual truth is. But people like being here or there. They don't like wandering around in between, because that's researching and time intensive.
Yes, it's like you just want to know.
Not a lot of people in here, by the way. There's
Just,
tons of people here and tons of people here, but there's not a lot of people in the middle.
so it
they
must be
tend,
wrong,
we tend
right?
to want to be where there's lots of people.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining me and coming on so many times to do this information. I can't wait already to see what we are going to discuss next. Is there anything else you want to add at the end?
Well, just the biggest help that there's been to raw vegans and vegans is get yourself tested for what I call the 3 problematic nutrients: D, B12, and iodine. And I say D and I don't say plus because there's no test for the other ones, really. I mean, not really. So just, you can go by D. If D is low, all the other ones are low. If D is fine and you're not taking a supplement, then the other ones are fine, because you're living close enough to the tropics, let's say, and you're getting it from sunshine. So D, B12, and iodine. And when you test B12, don't use the typical standard of care B12 blood test. It's not that accurate, especially if you're consuming any cooked, toasted nori or any kind of dulse or kelp that's been dried. You don't want to do a regular B12 test, because you can get analogs in there that fool the test and fool you and fool the doctor. So you do an MMA test. But that's in my B12 article that tells you about the correct test to do. And iodine is a whole nother issue. It's very complicated. But those are the 3 most problematic nutrients, because those are the ones most vegans and raw vegans are low in for a whole variety of reasons. So they're the ones that can have the most negative impact on your health, or the most positive impact on your health if you were low. So you get them up to where they need to be. So that's where that's what I'll leave everybody with, is the importance of, at the very, very least, you don't have to go for these whole big, huge 20,000 different lab tests. It's just specifically D, B12, and iodine.
And they can reach out to you on either the Facebook group or on your health101.org, which everything is linked here. All of the articles Don always sends me exactly, what he's went over, and all of the information that he puts together is there, and you can reach him on the website. And if they need help with identifying their healthiest diet, right, or the iodine testing, you're available. I think you have a service for that, right?
Yeah, I never expected to have services. I love teaching and I love giving lectures, and never thought I'd ever have to write books, but had to write some books. Okay. But then everybody was seeming to have a problem with DB12 and iodine. So I just started a counseling service that just specifically deals with those, in order to keep the price of the counseling super, super low. And one-time fee for the counseling, but I've been counseling with people for over a year, because D and iodine can take a long time to normalize properly. B12 can resolve within a few weeks, but the D and iodine can take over a year for some people. So that's the counseling practice I have. That's crazy. Where can you count? One person did say to me though, she pays $5 co-pays to go see a medical doctor. Now I don't accept insurance. I can't accept insurance. So she says, I can pay $5 to go get a counseling session with a medical doctor, and you're charging $347. I'm like, ma'am, do you think the doctor is being paid $5 for that time that you're counseling with him?
Right. I
It's
mean,
just
you
what
gotta
you're
make
paying.
some kind of money. I see how much of your time that you donate not for profit, because you're putting out accurate information, and you don't have a lot of things that so it's like, if you're going to take your time and do it, you already give it a lot of time and focus. Like, I see what you do even in the Facebook group. Usually when there's a question, you'll see your answer underneath, which is really, amazing that you have the time to really maintenance that too, with all the other stuff you're doing and writing in the articles. So
And
thank you for
it's
everything.
never a short answer, is it? It's always a very thorough, entailed answer, usually with links that you
Well,
can
I
click
keep coming back
on.
waiting. Like, I'll see somebody post something and I'll see a bunch of answers, and I'm like, wait, I want to see the real answer. I keep coming back to it and saying, when did Don come in? I know some of the admins, they tend to also are very good with linking one of your links, and they have a lot of knowledge just from being in the group, like I'm getting closer to. But there is a lot of stuff that you come up with that I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That's like my ultimate reply to all your things that you say.
Well, then what a lot of people don't see is I haven't joined any other fruitarian groups. I have all I can do to just deal with the one that I admin, but a lot of members in my group are also members in other raw vegan groups and other fruitarian groups. So when they see somebody there saying something that they know is incorrect because they've heard me talk about it in my group, they tag me. They just simply reply to the person by just putting my name in there. So I get it. So in my messages, is it messages
or
notifications, in my Facebook notifications, I'll see such and such, and I recognize the name because she's in my group, tagged you. So I go there, and it's somebody else's post. We don't need to take any B12 supplements, and here's why. I'm like, oh, here we go. So now I'm putting stuff out there, and I know I'm getting going to get a lot of pushback. And oh, here comes this guy Larry from this other group. He's not in my group. He would never join my group, but he's the big "we don't need B12 ever" guy. And so I'm like, oh, I got to deal with him now. Oh my God. And I try from different ways to get him to try to understand. Yeah, I've tried. The information you're giving out is potentially harming people. And don't you take the oath, first do no harm? Question mark. And I leave it there to get people to say, yeah, I really don't want to harm people. Why is my information harmful to people? At least get him to say that. I don't care if he yells it at me, but at least get him to ask the question. So there's a lot of work that I do that people in my group don't even know that I'm doing, because it's happening in all these other groups.
You gotta, sometimes it's funny because you'll come across these posts every now and then that or comments that'll say, be careful, you're gonna get too much sugar from the fruit and things like that. And sometimes I can't even help from making a comment, but I know I'm gonna, like the other day, I forget what post I was on, and I was called, not me, I think it was the other person, but they were actually just resorting to name calling because they didn't like the information. And like, the other day I just commented and, explained and linked the reasoning behind it and said, this might be something I say all the time. I used to think that way too. And sometimes that softens the message, when you put out like, do some more research because that's not exactly accurate information. And it's like, but people take one thing like that and just, like you said, like run with it. So it's almost like harming people because they're not being given the accurate information.
Right. And a lot of times I'll say something and the response will be, well, why do you say that? I don't agree. That's fine. We can have a discussion. But if they come back and say, oh, you're full of S, and that's their comment, that's their reply. Oh,
Just
you're full
because
of
they don't
S.
have the same information or haven't even taken a
So I'll
moment
say,
to read it.
okay, I've been wrong before. I can be wrong. I'm only human. Tell me why I'm full of S. Explain it, because maybe there's something that I don't know, but maybe there's something I know that you don't know. So I put both those scenarios out there because they're both true. So I try to deal with things that people can't argue with, just basic truisms. There may be things that I don't know that you know, and there may be things that you don't know that I know. Well, how are you going to argue that? That's inarguable.
Right.
So I try putting out some inarguable things just to get people to think, and I'm trying to see their motivations, because if they're just trying to sell something, I have nothing to do with them, because there's going to be no getting them to think about anything, because they're just being a marketeer. But if they're honestly think they are, what they believe is the truth, but what they're believing in is not the truth, I try to, as gently as possible, get them to understand what that is. Or I'll ask a question like, if you were teaching something that wasn't accurate, wouldn't you want to know about it? Get them to say yes to that.
Right.
What are they going to say? No, I wouldn't want to know. So I get them to say yes. I said, okay, well, just here's an article. And so a lot of times I'll put my links to articles and they'll come right back and argue with me. They couldn't have read the article.
Right.
The article takes at least 10 minutes to read, but they come right back 2 seconds later, arguing a point that's explained in the article. So I'll say, I'll just write, I'm willing to bet you $1,000 right now that you did not read that article. and they'll go, oh, okay.
That's a good odds on that, right?
Right.
No, that's funny. I love it. Yeah, that's the thing. People don't, sometimes they don't even want to read it if they don't want to believe it, because you might be right. Hey, who knows, right? Me, I'm like nosy. I have to read everything, even if I know this person's sounding ridiculous. Let me see what their thinking is, to your point. Like, let's see why they think that, and then I can then address where they're probably wrong in there. But and maybe not, right? Like because I've been wrong before, to your point, and thought I knew like how the healthiest way to eat was. When I was 20, I thought the healthiest way was to go keto, right? Like I'm supposed to be eating more meat. That makes sense because I want my body to metabolize faster, and it eats this and that. That research seemed perfectly normal to me then. And then, when I was 42 and found this, I'm like, oh my goodness, I was killing myself with animal protein. That wasn't right. So obviously I have been in many situations where I realized I don't know everything. And if I hadn't opened my mind, I might still be sitting here overweight with high blood pressure on medications at age 47, almost 47, I guess next month. But I'm happy that maybe I figured it out. It took almost 50 years, but maybe by then I will be eating the healthiest diet there is, and all the things incorporated. So I can go into that second half, like you said, going in my sleep, right?
Right.
And just hope that, and that's the one thing I guess that is important to note too, like no matter where you are in the range, it's always not, you don't have to just chalk it up to, I've been doing it this way for so many years, because I've heard about people that are in their 70s and Miss Mary, who's on my channel, ate fruit and, reversed a lot of, things that she had going on for many, many years. So it is possible. So if you're listening to this just because you haven't been listening to Don like I hadn't for most of my life, and you want to get to this realm, it's always a good time to begin, and educate yourself.
Yeah, imagine somebody who comes to the realization that this typical Western diet that I'm eating, it just is not working out for me. And now I realize it's not a healthy diet. Let's see what the healthiest diet is. Hey, who's this guy, Don Bennett? Let me go see what he has to say. If someone went from the worst to somebody like myself or one of my colleagues directly, without spending years and years going through vegetarianism and keto and blah, 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 just went directly. Do not, what is it?
Pasco, right?
Pasco,
Go
click through
directly to the healthiest diet.
directly to. Now, there can be a problem with that. If you're older, if you start doing that when you're 45 and you've been eating a super unhealthy diet for 45 years, basically, and you go to the super healthiest diet overnight, you can burden your liver and your kidneys if you just do a 180. So,
Mhm.
and that could be bad. It could land you in the hospitals, depending on your state of health when you start doing this. So there should be a transition. It's just like if you're taking a medication, you don't want to just stop taking the medication. Some medications you need to wean yourself off slow.
Mhm.
You need to, wean yourself off the medication, because if you stop suddenly, it could be very bad. So making a super change from super unhealthy habits to super healthy habits, our organs aren't designed to go from that to there. They were designed to be, eating a healthy diet from birth, basically. Um, so we got to be very careful when making that transition. To take it easy. Don't rush. Don't rush. Let it take time. Let it take a 2-year period from the unhealthiest diet to the healthiest diet.
Mhm. And obviously we always recommend, like, if you're taking medications, to make sure, like you said, they're being monitored, because if you don't need the medication and you're still taking it, let's just say, you could be then putting yourself at too low of a level of something if you don't have them look at, and like you said, with the testing and making sure where your nutrients are and not really guessing. But when in doubt, I guess it's like, with me, I didn't have a test, but I thought, it's probably safe that I take a B12 supplement because and so, like, until you can get tested, I guess the point that you make is like, let's err on the side of the caution and then get tested so you can then really, but you have to obviously be careful with B12. So like if it is a false source of it too, I guess, like with D, so there's just different variables. So the best thing to do is get advice from Don, or someone who can help you through that. And what would be a good way to transition? Like what would that be like for that person? Do you recommend eliminating things slowly if they were at that point?
Yeah, you take the worst offenders and get them out of your diet first. Like dairy would be the first thing to stop. So just continue with everything else you're doing. Just get all dairy products out of your diet, and then, you know, strap in, because you're probably going to get a little bit of detoxification there, but it won't be too bad. And then after you get through that, then get animal products out of your diet completely and go vegan, but you're still eating cooked food. And then after that, then you slowly start to get cooked food out of your diet, and you start to do it like, then make breakfast, the first meal of the day, make that all fruit, and then make that just one fruit. But you continue to eat your vegan cooked meals for the second meal and the third meal of the day. I don't call them lunch and dinner or breakfast. I don't like using those terms. So it's slow, and then you'll get some detox, but you'll stay hydrated, get the up and down motion, get your that's when it's really important to have your lymphatic system working good. So people who just focus on diet and don't start being active, and they have a sluggish lymphatic system when they're trying to detox from the diet they used to eat, oh, that's a horrible scenario. So that's why the importance, like we were talking today, about paying equal attention to all the basics of health. And then you'll need more sleep initially because of the detoxifying that's going on. So if you don't know to go to sleep earlier, because your
You're gonna
alarm
feel
clock
like
is
you're
still going to,
tired.
yeah, exactly. Your alarm clock is still going to be set to the same time that you normally wake up to go to work. but now you're changing to a healthier diet. You've got healing going on. The healing is ramping up. You need to go to sleep earlier for sure. So that's why it's important to work with somebody to get guidance, or whether it's a person or a good group on Facebook or social media, to understand the other important things you need to do at the same time you're making improvements in your diet. And of course, I mean, I guess the first thing would be, if you're smoking cigarettes, that's the first thing to stop, even before dairy products. So it would be cigarettes first, alcoholic beverages second, dairy products third, then meat, then cooked food. You know, there's a transition to all this. But if you try doing it all overnight, if you're young, if you're 17, you could probably swing it. But if you've been around this planet longer than that, eating, you know, subjecting your body to what you've been subjecting it to, I wouldn't try doing it a 180 overnight.
And then on the other hand, just asking for a friend or maybe myself, like I did eat cooked food, which I can't, cook vegan food, I guess, over Thanksgiving after the initial thing, or the day before, I guess it was Thanksgiving. Then I ended up eating fruit because I'm like, oh, this is bad. I don't like it. It felt good while I was eating it, but then I was like, okay, this feels better because I feel like, okay, look at my energy level. Everything was, look at what happened there. Look at what happened there. But then, like, if I'm already then transitioning, I was still that little bit of time, it got me in a frame of mind where I started, even though I liked the fruit that next day, even that evening, I was like, oh, I feel like I want some of these leftover cooked vegan food. Like, it's amazing what can happen. Like you said, the emotional thing to it, because you're around family and you know what I mean? And it's like the emotional attachment and the maybe whatever's in the cooked food and that remembering, oh, that's what that was like before I went raw. It just almost set me on like a really bad track of where I was already out of that realm and feeling like I would never eat anything other than a fruit, you know? So I
Right.
was like disappointed in myself for even doing that because it's still, and then so since I went to eating all the fruits the next day, and then I still had to eat that cooked meal. But if you're already on that where you've been on all fruit, then it would be okay, to your point, to then go back to, the mono or fruit, diet that
Oh
you
yeah,
were originally on. It's
sure.
basically, yeah, like, but sometimes to your point, that would be rough. I don't even know like how I even did that. I didn't notice many withdrawal symptoms, honestly, when I was 42. I went from steak, meat, McDonald's, standard American to raw vegan like overnight, and it went on for 6 months until I had lost so much weight. But I started feeling so good. Maybe I had a little bit of I guess detox now, not withdrawal, but like maybe it wasn't even in the beginning. It might have been on the third week, which I don't know. It was just kind of like maybe I felt like, I can't remember now what it was, but I remember saying, this is weird. I felt like, I felt fine, and then all of a sudden on week 3, I guess all that old meat and stuff had finally gotten out of my system and my digestion had cleared, and then it was like, wait, what's going on here? I think I was like, I don't even remember what it was. Maybe a headache, or I was feeling a little tired, maybe I wasn't even getting enough water, who knows what it was. But it's like, it kept me motivated to keep doing it. But obviously now I know that probably wasn't healthy, but I wasn't like, too old, I guess, or I didn't think I was. But it definitely could have been dangerous, now I'm hearing you say.
Right. And the diet that you were eating previously, your original diet, it probably wasn't the most unhealthiest of diets that
True.
people could
Yeah.
eat. And you weren't
That's
smoking and drinking and
right. That's true. So I guess that made it. Well, I was drinking sometimes. I'm gonna admit I did stop that though. And I hadn't smoked since like 2010, but I even took it, like, I'm like, oh my goodness, like every time I come to a new health level, I can't believe it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my goodness, from where I was, I'm at a point where I'm like feeling guilty for eating cooked food. Like, that's a pretty good transition over 15 years, right?
Mhm.
But thank you for all your helpful advice and articles and for spending so much time with us. Oh my goodness, I kept you forever here. Thank you for that.
All right, I'll see you guys next time.
All right, thank you for watching Amazing Transformations with Don Bennett. Guys, please share and like and subscribe and share this video to get this information out. Thank you, Don. You have a great rest of your evening. I appreciate you. Thank
You
you.
too. Bye.